I'm here with Daniel Silke, our keynote speaker from earlier today, who was talking about the global trends that was shaping the African continent. We're going to have a quick chat now about the session today. So, Daniel, why don't you explain a little bit about your organisation and what you do, first off?
Yes, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here today. I'm a political economy specialist, and I have a consultancy which looks at trends, political and economic trends, and meshes the two together. And most of my clients are corporate clients who are looking to see where the world is at right now, where the world is going in the future. And that's what I do. I service many different industries, but I have a particular love and interest and passion for hospitality.
So today's session gave a very juxtaposed vision of where Africa is. We've had, on the one hand, plenty of opportunity, on the other, gloom and doom. Tell us a little bit about where this all sits and what your thoughts are on it.
Look, I think if you look at all of the statistics over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, it's been one-way traffic. Those GDP charts have gone off the roof. Every year things are looking better. Every year African economies have been growing and growing and growing. We've now reached a peak in 2015 where some of these big macro trends, be they the end of the commodities super cycle, a lower oil price affecting revenues in many core African countries, issues surrounding China's growth and question marks about the relationship between Africa and China as well, the resumption of the US interest rate cycle. These are big issues that have all come together right at the same time in this first 6 months of 2015. And on the basis of that, Africa is really going to start feeling some degree of pressure. Budgets are going to be cut. And I think that we are treading into sort of uncharted waters. Given this wonderful 10, 15 years that we've had, we're just going to have to pull back and say, well, African countries are going to, I think, certainly have to cut their cloth according to their revenue. And it's going to be much harder in the next few years than it has been.
And you mentioned, obviously, the issues with currencies at the moment against the dollar. This is a massive issue, and the problem with paying back debt. Where do you see that going?
Yes, well, again, I mean, you've got currencies across the African continent that have depreciated by 40% since the beginning of the year, Zambia in particular. And at the same time, over the course of the last few years, Zambia has been issuing sovereign bonds. They now have to repay the interest on those bonds. The interest has gone up, and of course, they've got to pay it in US dollars. Yeah. So they are affected by also a double whammy when it comes to the situation. And I think it also poses a lot of questions about borrowings into the future. And again, it poses the real question to African governments. What can they do domestically to encourage much more pragmatic economic policies to try and encourage sustainable growth? Not growth that is dependent upon commodities and the extractive minerals that they take out of the ground. And that's the real issue that Africa now faces. It probably should have addressed this issue before, but it's now going to be forced to sit down and address the issue.
And what would your advice be there? Would it be diversification, for instance?
I think you have to diversify your economy. Some economies have moved into the services sector, for example, and Nigeria, despite its reliance upon oil, has at least, I think, moved to some degree into services. But of course, there's agriculture, and to take advantage of the opportunities that exist on the continent, Ethiopia is a country that has done that, and it's helped Ethiopia get out of its poverty trap to some degree. I think that's important. So there are these opportunities, together with, of course, encouraging some sort of manufacturing sector. It's been deficient in Africa. It's quite difficult to establish a manufacturing core, but niche value-added manufacturing can be a mainstay of African economies. So there's a lot of room to maneuver, but it's diversification.
Yeah, the FMCG sector is going to be crucial in this growing up of Africa, I guess, and the development of Africa, I guess.
Well, you know, for some time we've been looking at the sort of rising African middle class. Yeah. And it's a critical issue also because I think mention was made today, and it's a very important issue that hospitality across the continent is not just going to be driven by foreign arrivals into the continent. It will be driven by domestic African or intra-African trade and intra-African tourism and business tourism. So getting this middle class up and running across the continent, getting a real middle class and a sustainable middle class up and running is critical for African economies. And that's another test, to move beyond the $2 to $4 a day nascent emerging middle class to a middle class which is $20 a day or more and who can afford to spend money in hotels and to travel more widely. And that's a challenge.
And this is where some of the good news is obviously about demographics that you mentioned, but also, you mentioned, I love those examples about ShopRite. Why don't you just finish on a positive and tell us a few bits about what is on the strong side of the retail side of things?
There's been no change to the positive fundamentals in Africa, and that's the good side. Notwithstanding all of these current issues, demographic growth is going to drive this economy for the next 100 years or more. 4 billion people on Africa alone by 2100. This is enormous. Nigeria, 900 million people projected now by the United Nations by 2100. It's enormous. Yes. And on the basis of that, certainly I think demand and pent-up demand, not only for hospitality, but for FMCG goods, for a whole range of products and services, are going to be the mainstay for many businesses across the world. But the question really remains, of course, what do you do with people? People have got to work. They've got to be educated, they've got to work, and they've got to have governments that function and provide accountability as well within their societies. And I think Africa's in a better space today than it has ever been to do that. But it's going to be a testing time into the future with tremendous potential.
And I guess as a final point, you mentioned it's the long game. So this is not an overnight success or bust, a boom or bust. It is the long game.
Absolutely. Look, in this industry, it's a long game. These are big capex expenditure projects. They involved, the pipeline is over many, many years to completion. Economic cycles come and go. Governments come and go in the interim. And I think certainly that the business here certainly is well positioned for a long game. Yeah. And I think that most hospitality service providers have correctly bought into this future African growth story that hasn't changed, in my opinion. So laying the foundations now, being early movers now, is going to pay dividends into the future. And I get excited about that.
Yeah, so do I. And thank you so much for participating today. Your session was so engaging. And thank you for joining us for this short précis of the session as well. So thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to be with Bench and to be part of the industry. It's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.